Alright, Reddit. Get ready for an amazing journey. Juggling 2 children, I am a single mother hardly above water. Though things were tight, we were handling it. Then my sister Jessica materialized, like a whirlwind slamming into my life. Though she is 31, she behaves like a teenager. She has no funds or employment, and only constant turmoil. She had her 4-year-old boy with her, and had been evicted. Surprise, surprise, with wide eyes begging for help. Since I'm not merciless, I let them remain. I considered it as a passing hitch in the road. Boy, I guess I was mistaken. My kids already share a room. My apartment is not that large. I have Jessica and her son camping in the living room right now. My right to privacy missing. My sense of reason? Linked via a thread. It was not a total catastrophe during the first several weeks. Jessica claimed to be helpful around the house, cleaning the dishes sometimes or emptying the garbage. Bless his heart, her son behaved really nicely. Her loser boyfriend, Mark, then came into play. Late in his 30s, unemployed, this man felt he was God's gift to women. He wore those horrible stained sneakers, vaped nonstop, and possessed Jupiter's size of ego. He wasn't even living with Jessica when she was kicked out, but he started to show up on my couch all of a sudden. It was first only inconvenient visits. Then he was there every single day, dining on my cuisine and seeing my TV as though he owned the place. I told Jessica I wanted him nowhere near me, particularly while I wasn't home. She spieled the whole, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again." Yes, indeed. It happened once more and again. The contempt was absurd. I persisted, though, attempting to be the larger person. To be honest, I felt awful for Jessica. I wanted not to argue in front of the kids. I reasoned perhaps she simply needed encouragement. Looking back, I ought to have kicked them both from the second Mark became a regular. The strange events began at this point. First, it was small matters. My hairbrush vanished, and my makeup would be shifted. I thought I was just misplacing stuff. Being a working mother can cause a bit of scatterbrained behavior. It soon became more intense, nevertheless. I discovered my closet door wide open one day when getting home. I'm a little OCD about my closet right now. My youngest enjoys making a mess, so I usually keep it locked since I don't want such kind of anarchy in my life. Seeing it open sends warning bells. My children swore they hadn't been in my room when I asked them. I thought they were right. My youngest is afraid of getting in trouble, and my oldest is 11 and knows better. That left Jessica as one possibility, but I lacked evidence. Thus confronting her without it seemed improper. And what if I was mistaken, assuming I was merely paranoid? What if I so became clever instead of going nuke? Ordering a cheap small security camera off Amazon, I hid it in my room and aimed it at my dresser and closet. Not even my children. I kept this from everyone. Though I captured them, it took roughly 1 week. Crimson-handed, Jessica, plain as day, was walking straight from my dresser into my room while I was at work, opening drawers, sorting through my jewelry box. My heart slumped. She was searching for something, not only curious. A few days later, Mark, this guy who didn't even live here, was acting as though he was on a buying spree in my room. I got enraged. The entitlement, the audacity, it was excessive. Not even attempting to be subtle were they. One day, they spent a good 20 minutes sorting through my closet, pulling out my purses, then attempting to put everything back as I wouldn't have noticed. Though I knew I couldn't let this slide pass, I wanted to be smart about it. I wanted no chance for Jessica to act the victim. Every day I watched the film, and each day there was more. Jessica, Mark, and occasionally even together, prowling through my stuff while I was out working my butt off. It seemed like a betrayal I couldn't even fathom. 2 days later, the last straw arrived. My bedroom door locked when I returned from work. Since I am the only one carrying a key, I recognized right away something was wrong. My stomach fell. From the kitchen, I took the spare key, opened the door, and entered total anarchy. One of my handbags, the one I had been hiding money for my kids' Christmas presents, disappeared. My closet was in disarray, and my dresser drawers were open. It was buried among other items, not simply lying about. Whoever grabbed it understood exactly what they were seeking. Knowing it was Jessica and Mark, looking at the camera tape, I saw Jessica, bold as brass, entering my room, accompanied by Mark right behind her. They tore through my stuff, not simply peering about. Then Jessica grabbed the handbag, opened it, and pocketed the money. Clear as day, $3,500. Went. You have no clue how hard I labored to save that money. Late evenings, skipped meals, giving up every little bit I may have desired for myself, so my children might have a fantastic Christmas. And here comes Jessica, acting as though it belonged to her, and as though I owed her something. Too furious to weep, She naturally didn't respond when I called her right away. She said nothing when I texted her. Where the hell are you? We need to talk. Now. The boldness of this lady. They showed up hours later, looking all laid back as if they hadn't already gone through my room. Arms crossed, I stood in the living room asking, "Where's my money?" Jessica pretended not to be guilty, like she didn't know exactly what I was talking about. "What money?" she questioned. "The $3,500 you snatched from my handbag," I said. "Don't even try to perform dumb, Jessica. I have it all on camera." Her face turned pallid, and Mark began to move uneasily. "I didn't take anything," she stammered. "You had to have lost it." I shot. "Misplaced it." "Are you kidding me?" "Cut the crap. You and Mark were in my room going through my stuff. You grabbed the handbag, and you took the money. Don't even try to lie to me." The waterworks got underway at that point. 9 yards overall and crocodile tears. She said, "I didn't have a choice." She cried. "I needed it for my son's bills as well." Her nerve to drag her child into this. "Bills? Don't give me that. You've been living here rent-free, eating my food, using my electricity, and this is how you repay me?" Of course, Mark aimed to project the tough man. He continued, stepping forward like he was intending to scare me. "You don't have to talk to her like that." I fixed him dead in the eye. "You don't pay rent, you don't contribute, and you're not welcome here. So unless you're about to hand me $3,500, shut your mouth. You don't get to talk to me at all." I was phoning the cops when I informed Jessica she had till the end of the day to return my money. She began to grovel, claiming she had lost it. "What do you mean you don't have it?" I asked. She then conceded they had already used most of it, regarding takeout, petrol, and other stupidity. My jaw ground down on the floor. "You're telling me you blew $3,500 in a matter of hours? Are you serious right now?" She continued to weep, while Mark stood there like a moron. I exhorted them both to leave my house. "You have till tonight to work out how to reimburse me," I advised. "And if you don't, I'm pushing charges. You're really going to call the cops on your own sister." "What about my son? What about family?" Jessica said I was trying to guilt-trip her. That was the final straw. "Family?" I responded back. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie and manipulate. You're not family. You're a leech. Now get out." Jessica hadn't paid me back by 8 p.m. I had given her a shot, but she obviously wasn't giving me any respect. I thus carried out my necessary actions. I gave the cops a call. Among the toughest things I have ever done was file that report. Not because I felt guilty for Jessica, hell no, but rather because it seemed like the last nail in the coffin of our relationship. I waited, told the cops everything, and handed them the video. When the cops arrived, Jessica and Mark had flown. Cowardly. The cops issued a warrant for their arrest after removing all the specifics. Standing in my peaceful living room, I experienced an odd mix of relief, guilt, and resentment. It wasn't finished, not by a long shot, but at least I had moved to keep my children safe. I simply didn't expect how untidy everything was about to get. I had evidence that was damning. Jessica and Mark treat my room like their own personal playground, and crystal clear video of them. You would think it would be sufficient to have them kicked out on their ears. Still, I wanted to be sensible about it. Jessica would spin things around and make herself the victim if I simply exploded. I thus waited, boiling with resentment, organizing my next action. I watched the tape every day, and each day there were people helping themselves to my life. It was like a great betrayal, a breach. And then arrived the breaking moment. One evening when I got home from work, my bedroom door was locked. That seems odd. I only lock it inside. Over me came a cold fear. My heart thumping, I fumbled for the extra key. When I at last opened the door, what I saw was total anarchy. Drawers opened, clothes all over the floor, and my handbag, the one I had stashed with the Christmas money, gone. It was hidden in a corner of my wardrobe, not just visible. They understood just what they were searching for. My blood ran frigid. When I watched the webcam, Jessica was walking into my room, accompanied by Mark trailing behind. They raided the property, not just snooped this time. Then, clearly as day, Jessica grabbed the handbag, opened it, and placed the money into her pocket. 3,500 USD gone. All those additional shifts, all those small sacrifices I made to enable my children to have a pleasant Christmas, all for nothing. I was absolutely enraged. I felt devastated, Jessica did not answer when I called. Typical. Demanding to know her location, I texted her. Quiet. The nerve of this woman is remarkable. To take from me, then vanish. Hours passed, and at last they waltzed back in, behaving as though nothing had occurred. That marked it. I straightaway approached them, my voice quivering with fury. Where's my money? I asked. Master of playing stupid, Jessica pretended she had no idea what I was talking about. All innocent. What money? She asked. I growled, don't play games with me. The $3,500 you snatched from my handbag. I have you on camera. Mark began fidgeting as the color faded from her face. I didn't take anything, she said, stammering. You must have lost it. I laughed and said, lost it? I watched the video. You and Mark were in my room sorting through my stuff. You grabbed the money and then you're going to lie to my face? The tears began at that point, phony crocodile tears. She moaned, I had no choice. I needed it for my son and for bills, as if that explained everything. Bills, I shouted. You have been eating my food, living here rent-free, and this is how you thank me? Always the fearless one, Mark chose to intervene. He remarked, puffed out his chest, you don't have to talk to her like that. I shot him a nasty look. You keep your mouth shut. You don't pay rent here. You don't contribute anything. So unless you're about to hand me $3,500, keep your mouth shut. I told Jessica to either call the police or pay me back by the end of the day. She argued she no longer had the money, begged, and pleaded. I shouted, what do you mean you don't have it? And at that she admitted they had already spent most of it. Takeout, gas, and God knows what else. My ears let me estrange myself. You blew $3,500 in a few hours. That was their Christmas money! She kept crying, and Mark stood there staring dumb. I was tired enough. Get out of my house, I answered. Both of you, and I'm phoning the cops if that money isn't back in my hands by tonight. Jessica visited one last guilt trip. You'd really call the cops on your own sister. What about family? Family? I spouted. Family doesn't steal from each other. You're not family, Jessica. You're a parasite. Now get out. I walked my living room that evening like a caged beast. Though Jessica and Mark were gone, their treachery still reverberated. My kids' Christmas was taken, the money vanished, and I was left with just a gnawing rage. By 8 p.m., not just my money, but also no indication of them. Jessica would have spit in my face if I had given her an opportunity. Now was the moment to act. I phoned the cops with a heavy heart. Telling the cops everything seemed like opening a wound. Showing them the video, the indisputable evidence of Jessica and Mark's transgressions, they deleted my comment, pledging to capture the two using any means at hand. A weird spectrum of feelings flooded over me as the police cruiser turned away. Relief at last doing something, resentment at the unfairness of it all, and a great sadness for the broken link with my sister. My phone rang the following morning while I was getting my children ready for school, an unidentified count. Though almost I turned away from it, something urged me to respond. Hello? On the other end, a little weak voice said, It's Jessica. Please do not do this. Ryan made me do it. You know how he is. I did not mean to steal the money. Regular. Changing the focus to the guilt. Don't even try that, Jessica, I warned. You're a grown woman. You made a choice. You entered my room, you grabbed my money, and now you're facing the consequences. She began to cry, then kept on about how she had nowhere to go, how Mark was mad with her, and how she worried about her son. And for a little instant, I nearly felt guilty for her, not for what she did, but for the mess she had created in her life. But then I thought about my children, their stolen Christmas, and that pity vanished. I have already called the police, Jessica, I said. Mark and you have to turn yourselves in. Her voice started to shift right away. After everything I have gone through, you are really doing this to your own sister? I hung on. I was going to refuse her control over me. She may perform the victim role before a judge, if she so desired. Of course, the drama continued elsewhere. Later on in the day, my dad phoned. Now, my dad is the kind of person that avoids conflict entirely. I so knew exactly what he would say when he called. Can't we manage this as a family? He begged. Jessica's had a tough time. Maybe she made a mistake, but calling the cops? Isn't that a bit much? With a calm voice. Dad, I said, this isn't about a mistake. She stole $3,500 from me. That's a choice. It's not just the money. She's been lying, sneaking about, and letting Mark disrespect my house. I have enough, he sighed, that weighty, disappointed father's sigh. But she's your sister, and I'm her sister, I rebelled back. Did that stop her from stealing from me? Did she think about my kids when she took that money? No, she didn't care about anybody but herself. After that, he had not much to say. He hung up, murmured something about hoping we could figure it out, and I was so annoyed I had to go outside for some fresh air. Right? Family. They can push your buttons just as no one else can. Jessica and Mark were still on the run at this time. Neither the cops nor any family member seemed to know where they were hiding. I reasoned they were simply hoping everything would blow over. 2 days later, though, Jessica performed the worst action known to exist. She returned right to my place. Tuesday morning found the sun beaming through the living room window, creating a false impression of tranquility over the day. Startled by a knock at the door, I wondered who could be there. I froze and peeped through the blinds. Jessica, looking absolutely out of place, like a stray dog caught in a rainstorm. I was standing on my porch. Seeing her there, after everything, set me on fire. I pushed open the door, and without saying anything, punched her hard in the face. Though not a knockout punch, it was plenty to convey the message. I was not playing about. She staggered back, gripping her face, then tried to run. I took her arm and yanked her back inside. "Oh no, you do not," hissed. "We are having this right now." She looked about furiously, as though she expected Mark to show up there and save her. Still, he vanished from view. She knew she was alone. "Where is my nephew?" I asked. She stuttered something about him hanging with her pal Alex. For a while, I doubted her. "Call Alex. Now. I want evidence." She hesitated, then got out her phone and video called Alex based on the look in my eyes. Thank the spirits. There he was, sound and safe, nibbling snacks at Alex's house. That woman belonged to an angel. My nephew's safety secured, I turned back to Jessica. My voice low and menacing, I asked, "Where's my money?" She flinched. She said, "It's gone," avoiding looking at me. "I know it's gone," I said hurriedly. "Where it went is what I want to know." And at that point she responded with the most aggravating answer I could have imagined. "Mark and I spent it," she continued, hardly looking at me, "on DoorDash, dining out, and weed." I merely stared at her, mute. DoorDash is, she paid DoorDash and weed, $3,500, the Christmas money for her children, not bills, not needs, not even something practically reasonable. She inhaled all of it on junk food and became euphoric. She flinched with every step I took, so she must have assumed I would strike her once more. Still, I did not. I stayed staring, allowing her idiocy to set in. "You are unbelievable," I at last said. Her face crumpled, and she began to weep. I was not interested. She really needed to hear this. "Explain yourself," I urged. "Right now." She rambled on about her desperation, her lack of knowledge about what else to do, how Mark persuaded her that it was the only way. I wasn't finding purchase in it. Desperate, she stole from me. She stole from me thinking she could get away with it. "And you thought DoorDash was the best use of that money?" I said. "You thought my kid's Christmas was less important than some fast food and weed? Do you have any idea what you have done?" Her tears got louder, but I felt nothing. "You stole from my kids, Jessica. You wrecked their Christmas. You wrecked everything I worked so hard for. And for what? A bag of food and a high? You're pathetic," I said. "Absolutely pathetic. And if you think for 1 second I'm going to let you off the hook for this, you're even dour than I thought." Breathing deeply, I tried to cool off, pointing at her. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to leave my house right now. You're going to stay gone, and you're going to deal with the cops when they come for you. Because make no mistake, Jessica, I'm pushing charges." She stared at me as though I had just cut her heart out. "You cannot do that," she begged. "You cannot call the cops on your own sister." "Look at me," I said. A knock at the door just then. 2 police officers appearing worried were waiting there when I opened it. "Is everything okay?" questioned one of them. "We got called about a disturbance from one of your neighbors." "Everything is not okay," I said, speaking deliberately. "Let me tell you exactly what's going on." I set it all out for them. The theft, the camera footage, Jessica's bulge showing up at my house following everything. I shut her down when she tried to interrupt. "Don't even try," I exclaimed. "They'll see the footage for themselves." The officer closest to Jessica stared at her. "Is this true?" Then, in line with custom, she tried to be the victim. "She gave me the money," Jessica said, her voice shaking. "She just forgot. I was only here to talk things out." "Unbelievable, Jessica," I exclaimed, increasing in voice. "You stole it. I have it all on camera." The cop held up a hand to cool me off. "All right, let us sort this out." Do you have that footage handy? I informed them the previous cops already had it. They nodded, noting something for their report. One cop came outside to run her name after requesting Jessica's ID. Less than 2 minutes later, he returned indoors. "Ma'am," he informed Jessica, "you have a warrant out for your arrest. I'm going to need you to stand up." The front of Jessica turned white. "A warrant? For what?" she asked sputteringly. "For failure to reimburse pilfers of stolen money to your former company," he said. "We're dragging you in." Though all I felt was justice, I should have felt guilty watching my sister imprisoned in my living room. Actions have results. She had been ducking hers for far too long. They checked her and discovered some cash in her pocket as they were walking her outside. One of the cops delivered it to her. "Is this all you have?" Turning to me in her vast folly, Jessica said, "Here, take this back." I glanced over the bills. 26.76. I counted it only to be sure. "Keep it," I advised the cop. "She will need it more than I can say." Jessica grudgingly claimed that Mark had dropped her off when the officer questioned her about how she arrived at my house. "Where is he now?" the policeman questioned. She stammered, then murmured, "He's parked around the corner." When the police checked, sure enough, Mark was passed out in the car like he had no care in the world. Their record upon waking him and running his name was even worse than Jessica's. He was taken right away and thrown back into the rear of a squad car. Closing the door and inhaling deeply, I knew both of them were at last out of my life. Though I should have been relieved, I simply felt tired. How had it even gotten to this? Later that night, Jessica's mother, who, for record purposes, isn't my mother, called me screaming like I was the culprit. "How could you do this to her?" she yelled. "She is your sister. You are destroying her life." I let her finish her tirade before coolly responding, "If you would have raised her right, maybe we wouldn't be here, but you didn't. And now she's my problem. Trust me, I'm handling it." She hung up and called me a few chosen names. I right away blocked her number. She could bail Jessica out of her own pocket if she so wished. I stopped helping altogether, not lifting a finger. 2 weeks later, the court sessions came to an end. Watching Jessica try to squirm her way out of responsibility was a show, but the judge was not feeling any of it. She had no chance between the video, her confession on searching for my gun, and the testimony from her old company. Jessica received an 18-month jail sentence along with orders for restitution. Given his lengthy criminal past, Mark got struck even more, 2.5 years. The news that is best is Alex currently has my nephew under full custody. Hearing about Jessica leaving him to run off with Mark, the court moved without delay. My chapter of life is at last ending, paying the cost of her crimes. Jessica will be spending Christmas in jail. For my part, I might not be able to provide my children the Christmas I had in mind. The major presents I had stored vanished. Nevertheless, I'll make do. I would improve. Reddit. If you're asking if it was worth it, the response is indeed yes. Definitely. Though ultimately justice won, my sister sought to grab everything from me. I can now at last concentrate on what is important, my family and my future. Story 2. As I watched the bank teller, my gut knotted, her brow wrinkled. "Are you absolutely sure you want to close this account?" she inquired. I nodded, attempting to swallow the lumps in my throat. It was the blowout bash Ellie had been dreaming of for months, the carefully constructed celebration for her 18th birthday. It felt now like simply another victim of the debris that comprised my life. Everything began when I found out my boyfriend, Mark, was seeing his ex, Jen, in secret. We had 3 years together, and although no relationship is ideal, I most definitely didn't expect this. Mark's daughter Ellie came from a past relationship, and I tried to be encouraging. Though we weren't quite close, I was there for her, the adult she counted on throughout trying circumstances. Last year, when I secured a major assignment at work, things started to fall apart. The bonuses began to roll in months of non-stop work. I was overjoyed at last, feeling financially safe, making Ellie's birthday dreams a reality. A huge pajama party with all the bells and whistles, a DJ, elegant cake, a hotel stay with her friends would help us celebrate. Though bold, I could afford it. Mark started promoting this ludicrous business idea about the same time. One of those concepts that sounded great on paper, but made absolutely no sense in practice. I wasn't comfortable with his wish for me to invest. We were not married, and honestly, it looked like a bad investment. I had also set aside those for Ellie's party. He exploded when I turned him down, accusing me of not being encouraging. We got rather into it, and he made me feel terrible. Though I felt sorry for being strict, I wasn't willing to compromise Ellie's birthday for his pipe fantasy. Things started to change after that. Mark became more critical, particularly with relation to my appearance. Little remarks regarding my attire and makeup seemed to be a continual stream of criticism, undermining my confidence. I ought to have noticed the red signals then, but I dismissed them as stress, or a passing phase. Then there was his ex-girlfriend Jen. She always hurt like hell for me. Mark had agreed to cut ties, but I started observing odd behavior. Ellie was often and remarking on Jen's social media output. Mark refuted any contact every time I brought it up, but the questions persisted. Our conflict got more intense. Mark became fixated on his business idea, while I concentrated on organizing Ellie's celebration. And then arrived the business trip. I left for 10 days, expecting the space would be useful. Still, conversations become much more tense. He hardly texted or phoned, and when he did, it was brief and icy. I tried to dismiss it, but that persistent stomach sensation wouldn't go away. One evening, I couldn't contact him hardly at all. I texted nothing, phoned 12 times. He answered at last hours later, claiming to have gone asleep early. Though it felt like a lie, I wanted to believe him. I set out to test him. I told him my trip was extended, but I really intended to be home one day early. Everything looked fine at first when I entered the house. Then I noticed it. Used condoms among the garbage. The heart dropped. Exactly what it meant, I knew. My world collapsed. All those questions and all the strange behavior came together. He had been cheating on me with Jen, the woman he vowed he would cut off from his life. That evening when Mark returned home, he behaved as though nothing was out of order. It tasted terrible. Inquiring about my trip, I stammered something about it being good. I could tell, though, he noticed a change. Perhaps he saw the rubbish had disappeared. Get this. He started by doing the clothes and clearing the garbage. Unless I beg him to, he never does laundry. I couldn't keep still for very long. I did something I'm not happy about that evening as he slept. I turned over his phone. I was curious, and what I discovered was worse than I could have possibly dreamed. Long chats, audio notes, images, hundreds of mails between him and Jen. Their relationship seemed to never have stopped. The worst thing about it is recent pictures of them together show happiness and smiling, like they were in their own little universe while I was foolishly being played. I got sick, tossing and turning. I was a maelstrom of perplexity, fury, and betrayal all night. Still, recognizing Ellie knew hurt the most. The stepdaughter I had been attempting to contact for 3 years had been in on it all the while. When I look back, I was innocent. I felt as though we bonded. There for her, I provided guidance, encouragement, and she was hiding something quite large from me. She's taken vacations with them, and images of them all together like a content family abound. I couldn't pretend any more the following morning. Ignorant, Mark sat across from me at breakfast, chatting about his day as though he weren't a total fraud. I thought bile was building in my throat. "Are you still chatting to Jen?" With a trembling voice, I asked. He froze, then started to defend. "No, why would you even probe that? I told you I no longer keep in touch with her." I spoke no words at all. I quickly pulled out my phone and went over the pictures. Not the books, only the images of him, Jen, and Ellie, grinning, casual. Thus, this never happened. My voice, as icy cold, asked, "Palast, it is not what it seems like. I am able to clarify." "Explain what?" I cut off him. "Explain your lies to me, then. While I've been at home, how have you been slipping about with Jen? How Ellie understood all of this and followed through on it?" His muttered, "Ellie, she didn't want to hurt you. She wanted not to hurt me." I laughed dismissively. "She's been sitting on this secret, hanging out with Jen and you, and she didn't think that perhaps lying to my face was hurting me? Over this whole period, the two of you have been making a fool of me." He tried to justify things, but I wasn't having it. "It's gone as far as it's going to go. We're done." He resembled a deer caught under lights. I expected an apology, some effort at accountability, but none at all. Basically silence. Being in the same room with him anymore made me sick. I headed upstairs, picked a suitcase, and began stuffing my stuff into it. My drive came from the rage. I considered all the times I'd seen Ellie, and she had known all along about what her father was doing. It was a face-off slap. Mark was still standing there lost when I returned downstairs. I cut him off as he tried to talk. "Don't! Just don't!" I left the door, not turning around. I started by going to the bank. Closing Ellie's birthday account made sense, like pulling off a bandage. Though it was tough, I wasn't going to throw a celebration for those who had lied to me. Ellie might ask her dad or Jen to pay for a party she desired. I completed it. Leaving Mark, I assumed I would get relief. But I felt nothing at all. His treachery and Ellie's cooperation had a terrible weight. I headed straight to the house of my best friend Rachel. She had always been more dubious of people than I was, so when I told her everything, she only shook her head. You are better off without them, all of them. Though that wouldn't make things easier, maybe she was right. I continued running over everything in my thoughts, seeing Ellie in those pictures grinning with them. It sting. 1 week later, Mark got the guts to get in touch. Not to apologies, but begged me not to call off Ellie's birthday celebration. I looked at the note incredulously. He dared to ask me to maintain performing the good stepmother following all around. After Ellie had kept his secret, I hardly bothered answering at all. I closed the account and called off the celebration. Whether it was her fantasy birthday mattered to me nothing. She had taken decisions in line with her dad. Still, the guilt tore at me. Was I treating you too harshly? Rachel was not sympathetic. She's old enough to know better, she declared. She understood what she was doing if she was at ease enough to travel with them and grin in pictures. You owe her nothing at all. Then came Mark's sister's message, imploring me not to turn away Ellie. She said Ellie had nothing to do with the affair, and that canceling her party would destroy her. She even tried to guilt me by claiming they couldn't afford to have the party I wanted. I was conflicted. One hand, I felt sorry for Ellie. She had, however, also actively participated in the dishonesty. Those smiles in the photos indicated she felt no guilt whatsoever. I considered what Rachel had said. You cannot hang on to somebody just because you are depressed. You have to sometimes prioritize yourself. Furthermore, she was correct. Where had it gotten me? Years of putting Mark and Ellie first had paid well. Betrayed and solitary. I decided this. Not a present. No call. No celebration. Though it felt frigid, it was the only way I could move on. Mark tried to get in touch a couple more times, but I brushed off his efforts. Nothing was left to say. They would have thrown it all away, while I would have given them everything. Life without Mark and Ellie was subdued. Too subdued. But it was essential. Hurt walking away, but I knew I had made the correct decision for me. Months later, I began to hear through the grapevine. Karma, it seems, had been busy. Apparently Jen lost interest in Mark once the excitement of the affair faded. She carried on, casting him in the shadow. She wouldn't even linger. He had thrown away everything for her. Ellie was not performing either. Her connection with her dad grew tense without me to help to smooth things out. She accused him of everything, but she never owned her own deeds. Things grew so terrible, she started living with her mother, the same woman she used to grumble about continuously. Mark lost me, his daughter, and his lover as well. The man believing he could balance it all came up empty-handed, and for me, I did not have to act. Karma cared about it. I almost felt guilty for him almost. But then, I reflected back on the suffering he would have caused me, and stopped wasting another idea. I was at last at freedom.